Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the support tier list for 1411. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. If you'd like to support the content further, consider becoming a member. It's less than a quarter a day, $5 a month. That helps out a ton. Or at least, turn off the ad blocker for the channel. If you can, I promise I'll never run mid-roll ads. It'll only be, however much YouTube puts on the beginning or the end. But that helps out a little bit too. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And I'm going to combine just talking about the patch notes really briefly at the beginning of this, ideally briefly in Strategy Professor terms, of course, probably for 10 or 15 minutes. And then we'll get into the tier list just so you can kind of see how some of the changes might impact supports in general. But here's pretty much what the list looks like, and then we'll circle back to it in a second. And then I'll try to do an ADC tier list over the next couple of days as well. I'm sorry, I do have a cold or something too, so if I cough a little bit, it is what it is. Okay, so they are changing lane swaps around. That's not going to matter for solo queue. And as always, this tier list is targeting towards really like Emerald to Bronze. It starts, the meta starts shaping up and being a lot different with, really high level players at Masters Plus and into Pro. And then once you start to get into like low Bronze and Iron, then it's gonna start shifting a little bit as well. So this is really targeting like the 95% of the people in the middle there between like Bronze and Emerald / maybe low Diamond. Okay. So they're changing the turret fortification, not going to matter for solo queue. First turret gold is worth 300 instead of 150, so this is going to favor pushing lanes. Think champions that can run Demolish or get extra damage against towers. That's going to favor tanks even more. A lot of times, stuff like Jinx, Caitlyn, Ashe, long range stuff is going to benefit a lot if they can get that first tower. And in other lanes too, obviously top lane, mid lane, whatever. Lanes that are pushing, that have pressure, are going to be even stronger. And they were already strong. Speaking of which, we've got Caitlyn here. So, Caitlyn was really good in solo queue, but not as OP as a bunch of websites would make her out to be. She's still good, but I think especially at Emerald Minus, a lot of people just don't use her mechanics well enough to really capitalize on her. I'm sure she would have been dominant in Pro, and she probably is dominant in Challenger right now, if you get her, but, and you might be thinking, well, Caitlyn, she didn't have that mechanics, she used auto attack. Well, to really do a lot of damage with her, you need to be landing your combo. So what's a combo? Like if they step on a trap, instead of just landing a headshot, you need to be in position to headshot, net backwards, buffer your Q while you're netting backwards so the animation goes off, and then get another headshot in there too. Just go watch someone, I forgot what his name is, but there's a lot of like one-trick Caitlyn's out there that'll show you the different combos you can do, particularly with her net. So a lot of people just aren't going to do that. They're just going to play her like an auto-attacking champ, and if you're doing that, you might as well just play Jinx. But she has so much AD that even if you aren't doing the combos correctly, if you're still just getting one headshot in, you need to at least be getting a Q and a headshot in if someone steps on a trap. But most people just headshot. But she was doing so much damage that she was still decent even if you weren't doing all that stuff. And Caitlyn's problem is historically, because her attack speed is so low, and usually people had to build attack speed items, then she would fall off at like, she'd be really good on one item if you got like Infinity Edge or some big ticket AD item, but then second or third item, she wasn't quite as strong, and then when she got to like the fourth item again, started getting more heavy AD items, then she was really good. But now people have just been building her, like Infinity Edge or like Collector, Infinity Edge, and then something like either Lord Dominance or Untao Wild Arrows. So just skipping the attack speed items altogether and just playing her almost like a ranged burst assassin type of champion. And I think they gave extra damage to her Q, extra damage to her headshot, extra damage to her ult over time. So that's kind of how she's been getting played. They're trying to dial that back by giving her a little bit better attack speed scaling. It's still really low. Most 80 carries, I think, have like in the 0.65 range. And this determines how much benefit you're getting out of attack speed. So like 1% of attack speed, if you have like a 60%, really means you're only getting 0.6 value out of that. So it's still pretty low. Although it's better than it was, it's still pretty low. And then the Yordle Snap Trap. Now this is only at later ranks it does less damage. Because it doesn't get the bonus. It gets bonus flat damage and bonus scaling. Or it did. Up to 80%. So she would max that second. So that's really kind of in the mid game around like, you know, level 13 or something where you would feel this the most. But that is a pretty significant downside there. Now it's still getting the same amount of flat damage. But if you have something like 200 AD, and it's just bonus AD, not flat AD. So if you have something like 200 bonus AD, which is a lot at the time, then it's going to lower it by like 80 damage. So that is quite a bit. But that Snap Trap was just doing so much damage. It was kind of ridiculous. Because then you're getting like massive... Because if you crit off of that too, because I'm pretty sure the headshot can crit, it's just like crazy, crazy damage. It's like one-shotting squishies. So they're dialing that back. And then the ultimate... It's a little less scaling on the AD, but it still has a really high base number, so I think it's still going to be good. So I think she's still going to be good. Statistically, I think she's down like 1% so far on this patch. Still a good champ, but not quite as like turbo OP as a lot of high-level players might make her out to be. Again, in Emerald Minus, but she's still a very good pick. I would still probably have her tier 1 or tier 2. Even if you don't play her absolutely correctly. Okay, Camille, a little bit less speed. This is not going to affect support, but Camille was doing pretty well, so probably tap her down a little bit there. I think a lot of fighters in top lane are somewhat OP right now. I wish they would tap their items a little bit more. I'm not sure exactly what, like the crit item that heals maybe should be tapped a little bit. But I feel like I see a lot of champions that just really start going off in top lane, and they're pretty hard to deal with. 1v9 style. Okay, and then the Phosphorus Bomb. Corky just hasn't been doing well. He was like in the mid-40s, I think, for a while. I know that some people on the channel were really saying that he was like low-key, strong, OP, whatever. Statistically, that just hasn't played out. But these were mid-patch adjustments. It is a little bit confusing why they are reiterating this. It seems like this should be its own little tab at the beginning for the mid-patch if they want to reiterate it. Because it makes it feel like he's getting more buffs when it's really just the same. I still don't think he's that great. But if you play him, I think people are doing lethality with him. Because he does most of his damage with his abilities. And all of his abilities are like physical damage now instead of magic damage. So lethality makes sense. I think people are doing opportunity with him. But anyways, he's probably a little bit better, but still not insane. Let's see how he's doing here. Still not amazing, about 50% or so. So, I don't know. I don't really like that change. I think making it to where he doesn't have to play around package as much, which is just kind of weird for pro play. But having someone who is basically an 80 carry that does mostly magic damage, I think is interesting just for, like, team composition balance-wise. Someone like a Kaisa, a Corky. I think it's nice to have some of that stuff in there. But anyways, it is what it is. He's not amazing right now. Okay, Draven. So, they buffed him a little bit here, so he's losing less on death. He's gaining more per stack. And they did already nerf his damage a little bit. But Draven is kind of overrated. A lot of people are kind of playing him, and he was getting played in pro, but he does have to snowball very hard, and he's very challenging mechanically for people to play because you got to catch those axes while also, you know, maintaining a good position, right? Because sometimes when you're going for those axes, it's just telegraphed where you're going to stand, and that makes it a lot easier for people to hit skill shots on you. So, you know, you got to be ready for that. So Draven is one of the harder ADCs, I think, in the game to really maximize. He does a lot of damage early, but he's not amazing. And I think that they did nerf Collector a little bit, and they're nerfing Infinity Edge here, and those are his two items. He can go Bloodthirster, which is a very, very good single damage item, but I think it falls off kind of hard later in the game because it doesn't have any crit. Although it does have a lot of AD, which also scales really well with crit. So, anyways, he's not great. he's overrated, I think. Okay, Gangplank getting a couple extra stats. I don't think this is going to matter. They did buff Essence Reaver a little bit, but he's just kind of having a hard time top right now because a lot of the fighters are just so strong. I guess technically he is a fighter, but he's just so squishy. Like, I don't think you can do a tank plank build anymore. Um, so I think he's still got a lot of problems. Okay, Gnar. At least they're buffing people that have problems, though. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but it'll probably move the needle a little bit here. Okay, Gnar is getting a few extra buffs. I don't think this is going to matter. I just haven't seen this champ a lot. He was getting played like a little bit in pro at MSI, but not a lot, I think. Um, this is probably fine. Gnar is just historically, he has to be like super overpowered to be good in solo queue because people just don't play around the timings on his big form and his ultimate. Like pro players will almost always, they'll force a fight and he'll come in with a TP from a flank right when he's about to turn into his big Gnar, and then he'll, show up and like ult everybody on a wall. It's so hard to coordinate and set that up in solo queue. Most, Gnars are going to be rolling up mini Gnar like without very much bar, and it's just really hard to play him correctly in sort of team fight situations in solo queue. Okay, wait, this champ feels very strong, so they're nerfing him a little bit. He just has a lot of wave clear, a lot of poke damage, like pretty good reliable piece of CC with his fear. This champ is a little bit too strong, and he just does too much damage from too much distance. And he's even got some utility, like his little movement speed and his shield and stuff like that. So I think he does too many things. So they're tapping him down a little bit. I think he'll still be good. He's not like overwhelmingly you have to nerf him, but I just think he's a better version of most other mid laners who are like that, like Xerath. I mean, Xerath does have his ult, but he has and Xerath does have a stun that's probably, it's even longer than Wei's fear, I think. But I don't know. It just feels like Wei just has way more options if people are good on him. So he'll still probably be pretty good. Irelia, a little bit of health growth per level. I don't think this is going to matter. She's going to lose 90 health at level 10. She's still going to be extremely good. Well, extremely is a strong word. I think she's a good fighter top lane if you're good with her. She does require a decent amount of skill, but seems like Blade the Ruined King is still good on her, and then you can just build mostly tanky-ish items after that and be pretty strong. Okay, Jinx, what a joke. This champ has been the best solo queue AD carry for numerous patches now. You would think that she would get nerfed off of lethal tempo, and technically she did, but other people lost more because she still has good range with her rockets. She still gets a bunch of extra attack speed from Get Excited, or if she uses the Gatling gun. So she just wrecks towers really fast, Baron, tanks, team fights, I mean everything. She's very, very good with Infinity Edge plus Hurricane. Because remember, Hurricane, her rockets that she shoots, the little Hurricane bolts turn into those rockets. So the changes to Hurricane to get rid of the on-hit, but to have better like AD scaling, actually benefits Jinx. She's one of the few people who didn't care about the on-hit that actually wants to do the physical damage with the rockets. So very, very strong right now. And yes, nerfing Infinity Edge does hurt her a little bit, but she doesn't use Collector, and that's the other thing that got nerfed. So other people that are Infinity Edge Collector builders, which is most of the top-end meta champs right now, are going to suffer a little bit more than she does. And, I mean, this is a total joke. She's going to lose, 2.5 AD at level 10? Okay, so she's losing 100 gold at level 10. She's still going to be extremely strong. Okay, they're nerfing 2 damage off of a Karthus Q, so an ability that can be spammed that's like, I think it's a 1 second cooldown. I mean, he's still going to be really good. Like, at later ranks, that is going to matter, and this is the first thing that you nerf. So it's 6 damage, but I think it gets doubled against ISO targets. So it will add up, but I think he's still going to be very good. Now, they have nerfed Blackfire Torch pretty significantly, though, so maybe that's enough to get him out of the meta. But I think he'll still be pretty decent. Kha'Zix, getting a little bit of extra damage. 10 flat damage. Now, if they're isolated, and I think if you get your Q upgraded, isn't it like 40% extra or something like that? So it's still pretty good, but this champ is just too difficult to play, I think, for most people in Emerald Minus. He's really kind of a booster champ or, like a challenger Smurf champ. He just requires very careful positioning to go in there, get your assassination, and get out without dying. It's really hard to 1v9 as him. Usually you kill one person and then that's just kind of it. It can happen, but you don't see too many Kazakhs like just jumping around. Like, I don't even know if people get the jump reset. I guess they probably do upgrade it these days, but I feel like a lot of people upgrade the W for the slow and the Q. So, anyways, he's okay. He probably used a little bit of a buff. It's fine. Cassante, okay, mana cost is down, but his damage reduction is down a lot. So instead of getting, in the mid-game 50% reduction, you're getting 30%, and it only lasts for 1 second instead of 1.5. So he's still going to be tanky, but it's a lot less tanky than he was, and All Out is getting a little bit more healing. That's fine. This champ is just not that great in solo queue unless someone's extremely good on him, but he seems to be really strong in pro. Although I don't think his win rate was insane by the end of the tournament. He was picked almost every game, and he did look ridiculous in a lot of games. Like, it rarely felt like having Cassante was a bad pick. People eventually started picking weird stuff into him, like Vayne top, Camille. I guess Camille's not that weird, but people kind of solved him by the end of the tournament, but it requires very specific picks. So if you're good on him, I think he can definitely hard dominate, but he's just so hard to balance because he's just so extra. Like, he just has so many different things in his kit that are like so useful, just quality of life type of things, that just changing the numbers around, it makes it really difficult to predict if this is going to be enough or move him in the right direction. They just don't really know where they want him to be. Like, they want him to kind of be a tank, but they want him to kind of be able to be aggressive. So I don't know. I feel like they've nerfed and buffed this champ probably 100 times since he's come out. At least 100 different lines of buffs and nerfs. Okay, Lulu getting an extra knock up, and the cooldown is down a little bit. This is interesting. I think enchanters have suffered a lot because there's just no defensive stats on most of the mainstream enchanter items. Like, you can get Moonstone, but, and I haven't played a ton of enchanters, but it does feel a little underwhelming. It does have 200 health on it, but it does feel a little bit underwhelming. The numbers just don't seem that high, at least that I've seen on that. Kind of this fixed version of Moonstone, so it's okay, but like Shurelya's is a big one where it lost the health on it, and they gave it more AP, which is cool. Like, most enchanters have good AP ratios, but that makes them super, super squishy, because 200 health on an enchanter is percentage-wise a lot, because they don't get a lot of health per level, and they don't have a high baseline health. So not having the health on Shurelya's is kind of a big deal. And they directly even nerfed the AP version of Shurelya's here. And that was something that Lulu liked. That was something a lot of enchanters liked. So that's rough. And then ability haste, they nerfed the hell out of that. Well, it depends on what it is, but they it's priced at 50 gold now when it used to be 27 gold each for ability haste. And it's like Ardent Censer doesn't have ability haste on it anymore, so it's like it's still a good item, but enchanters kind of want that. They want the ability haste, so it doesn't have survivability on it, doesn't have ability haste. The on-hit is okay, but most of the mainstream ADCs are wanting to just blow people up really fast, so the on-hit isn't as important on a lot of the mainstream. There are some exceptions. Like, she's still very good with Twitch, very good with, like, Jinx. A lot of these Kog'Maw, a lot of these hyperscaling auto-attacking champs she'll still be pretty good with, but she's okay. I think she's running like 50 or 51%. So this is nice. They're choosing not to increase her ability to buff allies, which is already pretty good. And they're trying to increase her, like, survivability on things. So that's cool. I mean, it's fine. It's a fine nerf, or a fine buff, rather. Yeah. So, okay, she just has really long cooldowns. That's, like, her W is very long, and that's the thing that they've nerfed in the past, where she has to choose now, do you buff up your ally, or do you polymorph somebody else? So, I kind of wish that they put the attack speed from the W on her E, but maybe that would just be too strong, so that you could reliably polymorph and give your buff out to people. give your attack speed buff. Just take the movement speed off of it if you need to nerf it a little bit, and just make Polly like enemy targeted. I mean, that would make her a lot simpler because then you don't have to make a choice. And frankly, with Lulu, something weird with her too is that like it's very easy to misclick. She doesn't seem like very mechanical as a champ, but she's one of the few champs that has this odd interaction where two of her key spells, her W and her E, can target enemies or allies, and you need to make sure that you're hitting the right person. So there's a big difference in polymorphing the assassin that's trying to dive your AD carry or giving your AD carry movement speed and attack speed. So when they're right on top of each other, right, with like overlapping hitboxes, even if you press on the right person, sometimes it'll do the other thing, right? Sometimes it'll give your AD carry the movement speed when you're trying to polymorph the assassin because their hitboxes are overlapping. So it's a really odd interaction that's really obnoxious. The same is true when you're trying to shield somebody. You could accidentally damage the enemy instead of shielding the ally. So you can kind of fix that one, but you have to like move your mouse over to the portraits and, you know, click on it that way. So that takes a little bit of extra mouse work, and it pulls your mouse away from the main sort of team fight area, which is obviously not a good thing. So it's a little bit odd. I think you could keep the shield in there, but I would like for them to divorce the polymorph from the attack speed and just give it to your shield. I think that would make her... Would it be too strong? I don't know. You could change around some stuff. You could see, you know, if you need to nerf some of the numbers. But I think that would be a nice quality of life if they did that with her. Just say, look, she's going to be the main, like, offensive buff, you know, champion. And just, like, fully commit to that. Okay. Master Yi. I didn't really think this would matter that much, but I did see a Master Yi going off in my games yesterday, so... Like, each one of these is not that much individually, but I guess getting all four of these by the time they get, you know, level 13 or something like that, once they get up there, it does add up a decent amount. Like an extra half armor, you get 6.5 armor, you get 65 extra health, you get like a little bit of extra AD, a little bit of extra attack speed. So it does matter, but he's still just going to be a solo queue Stomp champ. But I think he can be pretty good if you get left alone in your jungle or you pick up a couple extra kills. Alright, gotta hurry up. We're almost out of time as far as like what I want to spend on the patch notes. So we need to get into the tier list here in a second. Mordekaiser getting nerfed a little bit. I thought he was fine, but he was occasionally a little bit on the strong side. That's fine. I don't think it'll affect the meta too much. Nami getting a little bit of extra attack damage flat at level 1 is okay. She typically does try to land multiple auto attacks if she E's herself and just goes, you know, for harassment. Try to land an E slow and then land your bubble, that type of thing. Then your ebb and flow, the mana cost is down a little bit, which is okay. Mana's not as much of a problem because enchanters usually stack a whole bunch of mana regen, but that is nice, especially at later levels. And then Tidal Wave, the slow is bigger. I just don't think it's going to move the needle that much on her. She's still going to be very good with like Lucian and maybe a couple of other champs, but just doesn't scale quite as well as some of the other enchanters like a Lulu, like a Yuumi, like a Sona. But I think she's playable. I think she's fine. It'd be nice if they gave like a little better quality of life to the R, like a bigger hitbox or moves faster. Something like that would be helpful. Faster cast animation. But it's fine. Okay, Nasus, a little bit of attack speed growth. The E Spirit Fire cost is going down a little bit. The armor reduction is going up. I think this is a bit of a bait for all the AP Nasuses out there. I did have one on my team that was feeding early and then ended up doing okay later, but it's still probably not all that great. Ornn, a couple of changes probably won't matter. Pantheon, I feel like this is not great. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but they're like taking away a lot of his base damage on his W. Now, I don't know if that's a percentage of his max health or if it's a percentage of enemies' max health, because it's worded a little weird. But I think that's his max health. But then they have a different stat per bonus HP. So I don't know. I feel like it's less damage. But maybe at higher levels, if you stack a ton of health, it's a little bit better. I think they want him to be a little bit tankier. I still don't think he's going to be that great. Okay, Samira, 80 growth is down a little bit. Damage on the whirl is down. And Inferno trigger is down a little bit. Now, I thought this champ wasn't that much of a problem. And then I played against one yesterday that just really started dominating and popping off. And I'm like, okay, this champ's still pretty good. Obviously, Collector, Infinity Edge. Very good items on her. So, she kind of fits that profile of kind of high burst champs that benefit a lot from the type of meta that's out there right now. Oh, I put it back in the fridge. Just go downstairs and Mommy can get it for you. Okay, go get it. Sorry, I didn't think you were going to eat it. Okay, well, it's down there. It's fine. Just get it. Okay, Singed. A little bit better AP scaling on his Poison Trail. Probably not going to matter that much. I mean, if you go heavy AP on him, maybe it'll move the needle a little bit. But I think you still have to build some tank items on him, or you're just going to feed. And then Insanity Potion being lower cooldown. That's probably fine. I still don't think he's going to be that great. Yes, you have Blackfire Torch and Leandries, but again, I think if you go those items, you're probably going to be too squishy, but I'm not sure. Okay, Smolder is getting a little bit more power early on. Lowered mana cost, scaling with crit. Still don't think he's going to be that great. Could be okay. Talia, this is probably not going to matter at lower levels of play, but could be good at pro. She's okay. She's an alright jungler primarily, but you can play her mid too. Blackfire Torch getting pretty hefty nerf. Now, it doesn't look like a lot, but if you think about it percentage wise, that's a 25% damage nerf. So that does add up. 5 extra AD on Essence Reaver, and it costs a little bit less. I still think it's a bit underpowered compared to Infinity Edge or Collector, but it's okay. Faded Ashes. This is going to affect the clear quite a lot in the early game. Its AP champs are going to clear for a lot less. Shield Bow is going to be a better item later on. I don't think it's going to matter that much. Probably get this 3rd or 4th item if the game goes that long. But it is a little bit better as a defensive choice, really late game. Infinity Edge, damage is down a little bit. It's still an extremely strong item right now with that 15 extra AD. So I think a lot of people still rush it. But it'll be a little bit less powerful once you get more crit and you're consistently landing those crits. Knight's Vow. This is a pretty massive nerf to Knight's Vow. Losing 100 health and 10 ability haste. That is like 250 plus 260. So it's like 500 gold. So there are other items you can get. This is still okay. It's still protecting your allies as much as it did. You just personally are going to be a little bit squishier. So there are other options, but it'll still probably be a pretty popular item on a lot of tanks. And then Static Shiv. This is a pretty massive nerf to Static Shiv. They are buffing, or they're lowering the cost by 100 gold. It's getting 7% movement speed, extra AD, extra attack speed, and extra spark damage. So, one champ that, I mean, Kaisa would probably like this. I think Ashe has started maybe getting this in her build. I saw that had a pretty high win rate. So I don't know. We might be back to a Static Shiv meta here. People just haven't figured it out yet. It's like 130% gold efficient now. I looked it up before I started streaming. Or started making this video. So it's 130% efficient. It's got AD. It's got, it doesn't have crit. So you'd probably only want it on a champ that doesn't care about crit that much. But, it's looking pretty good. Okay, Serrated Dirk. You can't get a bunch of them. I don't think this was that great of a strategy anyways. We looked at it the other day when people brought it up on stream. Usually completing items was better, but for the edge cases where it might be better, okay, you can only have one in your inventory. Critical strike chance is down a little bit on Zeal. It's probably fine. Cut down's buffed a little bit. Absorbed life's buffed a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the tier list. So, I still think that Rakan, as usual, is going to be up there near the top. He's just so versatile. I think he's the best blind pick right now. He's got about a 52% win rate. which anytime Rakan is at like 52 plus, that usually means he's overpowered because he's a pretty difficult champ to fully optimize. It's like, I mean, difficulty is a strange word because he is very safe. So you can, just almost never die if you want to. But to fully play him optimally, there are just so many different sort of sequences of spells you can do. Right? So do you go for your W first? Do you R and then wait and then W? Do you R and then flash on somebody and then W? Do you R and then E to an ally, charm and then W? Do you stay in for that extra auto attack in the Q, or do you go back out with your E? How many people do you try to tag with your ultimate? How much can you get away with while still being able to E back out? Are you peeling in the fight? Should you be peeling? Should you be engaging? Are you the primary engage or the secondary engage? There's just a lot of stuff that you kind of have to know to sequence your stuff optimally as Rakan. So that means that historically his win rate has been less than... It's about 50%. Usually a little bit less than 50%, kind of like Thresh. So if you see him at a high win rate, then he's still going to be pretty good. And it's just that versatility that I mentioned before. You can play him with the hyperscaler like a Jinx, like a Twitch, or whatever, and just peel off of them. You can get enchanter items if you want, so it's not common right now. But if you do start snowballing, you can get something like Ardent Censer, Staff of Flowing Water. More common, you can get tank items, Locket, Knight's Vow, all that kind of stuff. So he's like a tank that also gives a lot of shielding and protection and peel to the carries if you need it. Right? So his shields are very good. They're 140 and you get 2 of those. That's basically a 280 shield, which is higher than most enchanters. And then you've also got Guardian on top of that. You have Locket. You can get Knight's Vow on top of that. And then you can also get Solstice Sled comfortably on top of that. So that is a lot of stuff that like an assassin or a diver is going to have to get through to get to your 80 carry. And you can even get Redemption on top of it. So, he can build almost any of the support items in the game. He can adapt to a lot of situations, whether you're ahead, whether you're behind, whether you're engaged, peel, whatever. He's just kind of got it all. I mean, the only downside to Rakan, again, is that decision making. And if you make the wrong decision, if you get caught out, if you try to tag too many people and you get CC'd and you can't E back out, then you're probably going to die. So he does get a lot of tank items now, but he definitely can still be squishy. Now, I was trying out Jack of all trades on him. And it did feel strong, and it does have a high win rate. But I just think you're giving up too much in the Guardian tree to get that, because your other runes are just not as good. And I like Demolish a lot more than Font. After the nerf to Font, you can trigger it on Rakan, but you have to go in and hit your W on cooldown. And that's a lot of mana, because you got to hit your W, then you got to E back out usually. So it's a lot harder for Rakan to trigger Font than like Tahm, Kench, or Braum, who just has to hit a Q and it triggers. And it no longer works that well with Ardent Censer. Because with Ardent Censer, Staff of Flowing Water, that was the main reason to take Font, because then if you CC somebody, then anyone that auto attacks that person would get the Staff of Flowing Water or the Ardent Censer buff. It's been that way for like however many years, 6-7 years. But now they've changed it. You don't get Ardent or Staff that often on Rakan, but I just don't think you're going to get a lot of value out of that in the laning phase. It's not horrible. It's okay. But I really like Demolish, especially the lower the elo gets, the better Demolish gets, because people are going to take bad back timings. So they're going to give you free plates. And especially now that they increase first tower gold, then that's even more bonus to try to get through that tower. So I've gone back to Guardian over the last couple of days, and it did feel better than going Glacial Augment. Glacial just doesn't give you personally any protection, and it can protect your allies. Like 15% extra damage sounds good, but that's only while they're standing on the ice, and ultimately that rarely ends up being as much protection as it is on Guardian. Right? So like Guardian, you're going to be blocking at least 150, or no, I guess at least what 80. That's 8% of your bonus health too. So if you have 1,000 bonus health after all your items, it's going to be like 80 to 100 or something like that. And for Glacial to equal that amount, you're gonna have to. They're gonna have to do a lot of damage, like 700 or 800 damage to equal that. So like it looks like it should be good on paper. And in a team fight, if everybody's all grouped up, and you've got like, 3 or 4 enemies all standing on the ice casting their big AOE abilities, yes, that's gonna be good. But I think there are just so many circumstances where it underperforms Guardian. Especially, again, for you personally, it makes you a lot squishier. And it just doesn't do a lot in the lane. This does add up. Like, it does have kind of a long cooldown. But when you trigger this a couple of times in lane, it does end up giving you and your ally usually an effective couple hundred extra health. So, it is nice. This thing, cash back, just kind of feels like garbage. You just do not get that much out of this item because it doesn't count your support item. It doesn't count your boots. And typically in most games, you're only going to get like 2 big items. So it's like 30 minutes in the game. It might give you like 200 to 300 gold. It's really not that great. The triple tonic, the first couple of elixirs just seem kind of worthless. You do get an extra skill point at level 9, which is nice because Rakan's second skill, his shield, is very, very good. So that is handy. And then Jack of all trades, of course, is good. But this pigeonholes you in a very specific build. If you want to build this efficiently, pretty much you have to go Frozen Heart early on and Dark Seal. You can do it with other stuff, but it's just weird items that Rakan is not typically getting in the meta right now. Like, you can do Locket if you want to do that, but then you have to get either like Wisp, typically, after Locket, which is only going to build into like either Shirelia's or Ardent Sensor. And either one of those items is like super popular on Rakan right now. So, I worked through a bunch of the different ways you could get Jack of all trades, and it is really strong on paper, right? Getting 25 bonus AP and 10 extra ability haste is obviously good, but I just think all 3 of these runes, like these 3 in particular, are better than these 3 over here most of the time. So I'm back to Guardian. That's what most of the high-end Rakan players are doing. And then, of course, you pretty much always want to go Zombie Ward and Ultimate Hunter. These are just too strong not to pick up. Okay. And then, like, standard items. Locket is almost always really good, even though the win rate getting it, like, first item is kind of low. And it does scale by level. It still is nice protection. Now, Zeke's is pretty handy too. They did take the mana off of this, so this is a lot better than it used to be for Rakan. It does apply some damage, right? The 50 extra, magic damage. The slow is nice for 5 seconds. Because after Rakan goes on somebody, usually with his R plus his W, if you're going to be winning the fight, a lot of times they can sort of run away, but this gives you that extra slow for 5 seconds, which can help you run down people, can do a little bit of extra damage, so it is handy. And it does have a much higher win rate than Locket. So you could do Zeke's and then Locket if you want. You can do a classic Locket into Redemption if you just want the maximum team fight capabilities. Even after the nerf, Knight's Vow, still a pretty good second item. Helia has a high win rate. I've tried that on Rakan. You are still pretty squishy. The 20 ability haste is nice. It does at least have health on it. It's got mana, or ability power rather. So, I don't know. I might have to explore this a little bit more and see. It is going to put out some decent damage, and it does heal people up a little bit more. But I feel you might just be a little bit too squishy with it. Because the damage this is dealing is probably similar in shorter fights to something like Zeke's. But you do get a little bit more healing out of it. So, and then Frozen Heart is still like a decent, 3rd or 4th item if you still want to get that as well. So, tons of different options. Just really good champion. As long as you don't get too blasted in the laning phase, he doesn't have an amazing laning phase, but he's still pretty good. Okay. Leona did come down a little bit on this patch. I'm not entirely sure why. She was at like 53, almost 54%. Part of it is probably the nerf to Knight's Vow. But she's still really good. Has very low cooldown ultimate, 90 seconds. I think that might be the lowest ulti cooldown of a mainstream engaged support. So, that means that if you get ahead especially, you can just keep ulting over and over again. Part of what made her a little bit stronger on this patch was they nerfed Cleanse pretty significantly, because a lot of ADCs would take Cleanse against her. So now that's a bit weaker because I think it's got an extra, 30, 45 second cooldown, something like that. So it gives her more opportunities to make more plays. Now she is heavily affected by tenacity. So things like Mercury Treads, because she doesn't have any knockups. She doesn't have any suppresses, obviously. So it's just all stuns. But she has a lot of them, right? Like 3 of her abilities are CC. They're all on pretty low cooldowns. And she gets a lot of extra free armor and magic resist. Excuse me. Which is going to allow you to dive a lot better. So, very aggressive early on. But she also has pretty much no escapes. So if you go in and it's a bad situation, then you're probably going to die. You're not going to escape. Or if you get flanked and ganked, you're probably going to die. So she is very good as long as you're ahead and as long as you're constantly pressing your advantage. She is good. If you fall behind, though, and you get pushed in a tower, she doesn't have any innate healing in her kit, and you're just going to kind of get poked out. So you got to make sure that you have an aggressive lane, that you're going to be able to make plays off of them. And most of the mainstream ADCs are pretty aggressive and do synergize really well with her. Your Jins, your Caitlyn's, your Jinxes, all that type of stuff. So I think she's still going to be really strong. You're probably just going to go for like a Zeke's Locket, type of build on her, with the option to do things like Frozen Heart if you want. Okay. Then Blitzcrank, still very popular, still very strong. Nothing really new going on here. You hit your hook, you're awesome. You miss your hook, you're worthless. Looks like he's back on that Aftershock. Guardian is also doable if you want to protect an ally from getting blown up. You almost always want Hex Flash with him, just because he gets so much value out of being able to displace and land hooks. And then after that, it's kind of up to you. Most people are just going to go Cosmic Insight. Just good value. Now, they did take away mobility boots, but I think that swiftness were already a higher win rate, because when you're moving around with your W and you have that sort of self-slow on you, boots of swiftness lower that a little bit. So you just want to roam around, try to land your hooks. A lot of the meta champions right now, ADCs, don't have a lot of mobility, right? So you're not seeing as many Ezreals, Lucians, Sivers. They're out there, and if you early pick Blitz, someone might play that. But if they're playing Ezreal to try to counter your Blitz pick, at the end of the day, they're playing Ezreal, right? Instead of Jinx, so that's a win. So, he's still pretty good. Trailblazer's obviously been nerfed as well. But it's a pretty good item on him. He's very one-dimensional. You just land your hooks, you pull them up. If you don't, then you just wait and keep fishing for hooks. Okay, but again, very good against this. Very good against squishies. Less good against tanks. But if you're ahead, you can still probably kill a lot of tanks. Even if you hook them. So. Okay, and then this shifted up a little bit. I did bring Janna down a bit. She's at one of her lowest win rates she almost ever sits at, which is like 51%. I guess I'll talk about Braum first before I switch over to Janna and Sona and why I brought them down. But Braum's doing pretty well right now. I've played him for a few games. He does feel pretty good. I think a lot of it has to do with itemization, in that he does peel and protect similar to an enchanter, but he gets to build some of the better items right now. Stuff like Locket, stuff like Zeke's. He's probably more likely to build something like a Knight's Vow. Yeah. So like Locket, Knight's Vow, Frozen Heart, all of that's pretty good. So great team fighter. puts out a ton of stuns off his Q, his auto attacks. Really good at protecting against ranged attacks. And ADCs are doing a lot of damage right now, so especially if you're against an AoE ADC, so something like a Jinx with her rockets and Hurricane, or Twitch with his ultimate, Sivir. There's a lot of champs out there where if you're blocking, some of their abilities, then it's going to take a lot of their damage out of team fight. So really strong. I don't think there were a lot of direct buffs. I think they maybe lowered the cooldown on his R a little while ago. I think it used to be like 130 or 140, so that was helpful. But yeah, just strong, basically enchanter, protector type of champ that's also a tank and has really high base stats. So he has a bit of a harder time starting fights from your more traditional tanks, your Leona, your Nautilus, your hard engaged tanks, but he can still kind of start with his R. It is a bit harder to hit. But if you hit your Q, usually that's enough for your teammates to step up and eventually get the stun and allow you to hit your ult and go to work. So I think he's pretty good. His win rate is at one of the higher win rates that he's had for a while, like 52 and some change. So I figured he earned his spot at tier 2 now. Now, should he be lower down tier 2? Maybe. He is somewhat matchup dependent, kind of like Leona. He can get poked out. He doesn't have a lot of innate slows, but that change to Font of Life does help because his Q is a slow. So now every 20 seconds you're giving yourself a little bit of a heal. You're giving your ADC a bit of a heal. And then once you get Solstice Sled, that's another heal that you can get. So he does have a bit of sustain now if you're landing your Qs, but he still is going to be somewhat vulnerable to poke. Obviously, he's going to excel with stuff like Lucian that can trigger his stun really easily. But he can slot in and do pretty well with most ADCs. Not amazing. I will say he's not amazing against a lot of melee dive threat because his shield doesn't do anything against melee. And he only has like one sort of point-click piece of CC. Well, it's not point-click, but like his R. Everything else takes a little bit more time. So if you have an assassin like a Rengar or something that's jumping on your AD carry, or Zed, stuff like that, then Vi, then he's not going to be as strong as those types of champs. But still pretty good. Okay. So I moved Janna down a little bit. Again, I'm not entirely sure what's up with that. They did nerf her a few patches ago. I think they nerfed the damage on her W, but still pretty good. It's just items that historically are good on Janna are not super meta right now. So stuff like Ardent Sensor, they did buff it a while ago, but the fact, like I said before, that it doesn't have ability haste and it doesn't have any survivability on it is pretty rough. I think she had been using Shirelia's a lot, so the fact that it lost its health makes her a lot squishier. And that they just directly nerfed it last patch was kind of rough for her. And yeah, they did nerf the base damage on her W at later ranks by quite a bit. So like not a ton. Usually you'd get like 3 points of that in lane and then max your shield. They did nerf the shield too, down to 220. So they gave her a couple of direct nerfs. Shirelia's got nerfed. Ardent Sensor's kind of off meta right now with most ADCs. She still peels really well with her Q. They also nerfed last season Glacial Augment, which is one of the main reasons she was at like 54% for a lot of last season. She was very, very good with Glacial Augment. She could trigger it really easily. And that gave her some extra protection and some extra CC, which was handy. So they nerfed all of these things, and she's still very vulnerable to poke. So if you pick her and then they pick something like a Caitlyn Lux type of lane, you're just going to be sitting around doing nothing in that lane, like just watching an ADC try to farm under tower. She can't force fights by herself. So she's really just kind of a peel and protect, which can work if you have a hyperscaler, kind of like the Lulu type of stuff I talked about before, the Jinx, Twitch, Kog'Maw. But Lulu gives them a lot more offense. Janna technically does have more defense, probably, but Um, Lulu's still pretty good at defending them, and she did get her R buffed by a pretty good amount. So Janna's R is like a really, really long cooldown. Still like 150 or something, I think. So she's okay. Still pretty good into Rakan. Good against a lot of dive champs, but weak to poke. Doesn't scale quite as much as she used to. A lot of her popular items have been nerfed. But she still has like a 51 or 52% win rate, so she's still pretty decent. And then Sona, still pretty good. I think Shirelia's was a fairly popular item on her as well. Although obviously she's good with other items too. Like Ardent Sensor, like Staff Flowing Water. But, you know, again, a lot of times those have been nerfed. Super squishy. They took the health off of all the items that she likes to get. Well, I guess she can still get Moonstone. Archangels. I think they buffed this, didn't they, a while ago? I'm not sure about Helios. Feels like it should be strong on her. But maybe people aren't getting it. I don't know. They still like Moonstone. I mean, if Moonstone's going to be good on anyone, it's going to be good on her. With her low cooldown W. And like Soraka. But she's still okay. She still has a high win rate. I think she's better the lower the elo gets. So at gold minus. But she's still pretty good at higher ranks. Very good if you are against other enchanters or weak laners and you have poke in your or you have like long range and you're the pushing lane. So if you have Jhin or Jinx or Caitlyn or something like that, and you're up against Braum, Tahm, Janna, Lulu, a lot of these other champs that are going to have a harder time engaging. I guess Tahm can engage pretty well, but you can poke them out pretty well. First Strike seems a little ambitious to me. I'd probably rather have Aerie, but nevertheless, she's really good. Scales extremely well. If you can position well in team fights and not get blown up, she's good. Has a hard time establishing vision later on in the game because she'll just get deleted if she ever gets caught out, but very good scaling champ. And then we've got Nautilus. Feels like he should have a higher win rate, but he's one of the lower win rate supports right now. It's kind of weird to think about why that is. I think his defensive steroids are just really weak for an engaged tank. So I feel like Leona is a lot tankier. Obviously, like Alistar, Braum, Tahm, all of those are going to be way tankier. So it's, his W is kind of wimpy, and you don't max it out first. Typically, you max out Leona's W first, but with Nautilus, you kind of want to max out either his Q or his E first for more damage. Aftershock helps out a little bit, but he just has lower base stats, lower W. Part of it is also people might still just be playing him like you're supposed to stay in there and keep auto-attacking. But I think a lot of more skilled players are going to realize that he's a little on the squishy side. You just kind of hit your CC and get out of there and wait on your cooldown. So you hit your hook, land your auto attack, and unless you're just hard dominating the fight, throw your W on E and just walk the hell out of there and just wait on your W. Because I think if you just sit in there and you just take all that collateral damage, all the AoE damage, you're just getting blasted by the the ADC if you hook a frontliner or something. It just feels like that's bad. So it might be a skill issue, why he has a lower win rate in lower elo brackets, but is still pretty good in higher elo brackets. But I mean, his kit's amazing. Obviously, you got to press R ultimate that virtually guarantees you're going to knock him up, especially when there's not a lot of mobility. Not a lot of Ezreals, Lucians, Sivers running around right now. Now Zaya's pretty good against the R. Sivir can be, Trist can be. So there are things that can get away from it, but it's still pretty reliable. It's very, very good piece of CC. Then his hook has a fat hitbox. I think it's even fatter than Blitzcrank's hook. Now it's not as devastating because you kind of meet them halfway. It doesn't pull them as far out of position. Doesn't do quite as much damage. But it's still a really good hook. I mean, one of the big things though too is you can't hook over walls like Blitzcrank can. So it does make it a bit more difficult to get some of those easy picks when you're at the dragon first or at the baron first and you ward over the wall, the support tries to come and place a ward, you can't punish that as easily as like a Blitzcrank can. You can still like Hex Flash over the wall. If you take, I think a lot of people like to take Hex Flash. It looks like these people are getting other things, but I would consider Hex Flash on him just so you can make those kind of plays. Looks like that's the most popular thing. But he's just a bit squishier. Doesn't have as much damage as a lot of other tanks, but he does have a lot of CC and is pretty reliable. And it's knockups, displacements. So he's not as affected by Mercury Treads as someone like a Leona is going to be. But yeah, his E is kind of wimpy damage-wise unless you put a bunch of points in it. It's just kind of got a case of like all three of his abilities you want to put a lot of points in. Like there's not a good sort of one-point wonder like you have with Leona, right? Like you can just put 1 point in your Q and it's going to be very effective. Your E is still very effective even if you're maxing your W. But with Nautilus, you really want points in everything. Like you need the W for survivability. You need the Q so you actually deal damage with your hook and so you have more chances to hook them. And you need E so you actually deal damage with your E. If you're maxing hook and W, your E is doing 55 damage. I mean, that's pretty much nothing. So it's pretty worthless. So yeah, his numbers are just a bit low, but his kit is still pretty good. And then Rell, and I know we're almost out of time here. Rell has a really high win rate. I haven't played against her a ton, so I don't know for sure. She does have a lot of CC. She does scale really well with the items. I guess it's not a really high win rate, but it's pretty good. It's like in the 52s. So it's, you know, better than Nautilus. But she is maxing the W and then maxing E second. I feel like there is a lot of counterplay to her kit. With her W, it's like such a long animation. Feels like a lot of people can dodge it, but again, there's not that much mobility in the game, so if you land your Q and then you do your crash down, you're probably going to be able to hit it. So I think Rell is a little bit sort of weird, is a bit harder to use, but she does have a lot of unique utilities, so she smashes the shields with her Q. I think she still does that. Let me look that up, actually. I can't remember if they took that off or not. Yeah, she used to steal shields, didn't she? Or no, that I'm thinking of Zeri. Zeri stole shields, and they took that off. Yeah, okay. So, especially against enchanters or things that are running like Sterix. Sterix has become a lot more popular. If you have your Q ready for that, Shield Bow, she does offer some very matchup-specific interactions that are really good. Her damage is okay, probably better than Nautilus, but less than some other ones. And like her R is pretty good. Still sort of low damage. Was this per second? Trying to bonus magic damage. Or no, sorry, that's not the ultimate. Here we go. Okay, so that's pretty decent damage. So, yeah, I mean, she's got a lot of unique stuff. Again, like the immobile ADCs where people can't dash out of your R is obviously going to make that a lot better. So, she's pretty good. If you want to play her, she's pretty good. She's kind of in that weird place, I feel like, where she doesn't peel as well as, like, Braum or Tahm. And she doesn't engage as well as, like, Nautilus, Leona, Rakan. But she's sort of halfway in the middle. If you want someone that's got, like, pretty decent engage, a lot of lockdown CC, is a little bit tankier than Nautilus, a little bit more versatile than Leona. She's a good mix. She's an odd one, but she's pretty good. As far as, like, you know, she's just kind of unique with her abilities. Just kind of depends on how well you use them. And then Nami. Nami did get a couple buffs on this patch. That's why I moved her up a little bit. I don't think it moved the needle on her win rate too much. If you land the bubble a lot, she is very strong. She's obviously very good with Lucian because of interaction with his double shot and her E and Mandate and all that other stuff. She's very, very good with Lucian. I think she's probably pretty good with Jhin. You know, Jhin lands his W, you land your bubble, and then, you know, you kind of go to town on him. But I think she does get outscaled by a lot of other enchanters in terms of buffing up your allies. and she's going to get blown up if she gets engaged on, by any of the tanks. So if you can really slam the lane and hard dominate early, she's good, but it is kind of rough later. Now, if you have a bunch of people that can hold them still, if you have other CC on your team, then that makes your life a lot easier. It's going to be easier to hit your bubbles, easier to hit your R. So that's pretty good. But if you're one of the only pieces of CC, it can be kind of rough. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I'll just talk about the last few here for maybe a few minutes, and then we'll call it a day. Excuse me, one second. Okay. Um. So Kench, I almost wanted to put him up in tier 2, and if you're really good on him, I could see him being up in tier 2. He feels really strong right now. I've been playing him on stream a decent amount, and once you get used to him, he's good. He's actually very aggressive early on. If you land your W, you can kill most people in laning phase. It's a pretty long knockup. It's like a 1-second knockup. And then if they don't run away, if they don't flash, they're basically dead. So you're going to land 3 auto attacks and stun. And his auto attacks hit, man. They do a lot of damage. He gets a lot of bonus damage early. He's got several combos. Like, if you can land that naked W, like I said, that's huge. Sometimes, even if they flash, if they don't do it fast enough, if you flash after them, after you've landed a couple of auto attacks and still get the stun, you can still kill them. Or if you have your R, obviously, you can eat them. If you eat them, they're definitely dead. But so he's actually surprisingly very aggressive and very strong early on. He is resilient to poke because he does have the gray skin. And sort of like what I was talking about with Braum, the change to Font of Life does help him out a lot because he has gray skin replenishment. His Q, whenever you land the Q, heals you up for a decent amount early on. And it'll trigger Font of Life to heal you up, plus heal your ally. So you've got 3 kind of small heals right there. So it does make him very poke resistant in the lane. Obviously, his big specialty is just completely negating dive comps. He has like the best anti-dive, anti-lockdown ability in the game with his R. So very, very good against Ash Arrows, very good against like Malzahar ult, Vi ult. He just negates a lot of other really devastating abilities that would kill through almost any other support. So that's very, very handy. Where he falls off, he doesn't have any buffs for allies, really. Like, you do get a shield, but it doesn't last very long with the R. His engage is... It's okay, right? If you can land this, it is very good in a team fight. If you knock up 1 or 2 people, it does a lot of damage. And you can just stay in combat and do a lot of damage. And if you land that Tongue Lash, it's kind of like Braum, where you're not directly going to kill them with the Tongue Lash, but it's such a brutal slow. It ends up being like a 70% slow. Oh, never mind. I guess they nerfed it. I thought it was... Is it 50% is still really good. So it's going to allow your allies to engage on them or, land poke or do some kind of follow-up action. Where's the slow on? Okay, it's 50% for 2 seconds. I guess it used to scale up to 70, which is kind of ridiculous. But the other thing is he does a lot of damage for a tank, especially in longer fights against other tanks or other bruiser champs. Like, your auto attacks really start hitting because this stacks up over time. So it's 4% of your bonus health. And it can stack up to 3 times. So if you're stacking this up, it's going to be... by level 11, 48, that's 150 damage and 12% of your bonus health. If you have 1,000 bonus health, that's going to be, it ends up being like 300 damage extra on your auto attacks. So, an interesting build you can do with Kench 2 is they just recently buffed him, or they buffed Heartsteel, I think a while ago. This is really strong on him because he scales so well off of max health. Like I just said, the acquired taste does a lot of extra damage. Your Tongue Lash also applies acquired taste. So now it's doing a lot of extra damage. And it has high base damage, so it's 280 plus like that 300 Like I said, once you get like 1,000 bonus health on acquired taste, so once you complete an item, it's really popping. I mean, that thing, it's like 500 something damage off of a tongue lash, something that's going to be a 5-second cooldown, which also has a brutal slow on it, and sets up your other combos. Like, it's a lot of damage for a tank. He might be the highest damage tank. He's certainly in the conversation, especially against single target. Does a lot of damage, and then whenever you auto attack with this thing too, after you've been in combat for a while, it's 80 plus 10% of your item health. So if you have 1,000 item health, this is an extra 180. So add that on, right? So you were getting like your tongue lash is going to be like 280 base plus 2 or 300 from your acquired taste plus an additional 200 off of this, whenever you auto attack them, plus just your baseline AD, is going to be like 100 damage. You're going to be autoing people for like 700 or something. It's a really big hit. It's not quite like an ADC crit or something, but sometimes it can feel like it against the squishy. It is a big, big hit. So Tahm Kench is someone who can actually clean up, or if you get on their ADC and you just keep auto attacking them, sometimes you can keep up and actually solo, right? Their ADC or solo, some other squishy if you get on them. So usually you want to hang back and peel, but given the circumstances, he does have follow-up engage now with his W, and if you get on that back line, you will kill them a lot of times. So Heartsteel is quite good. And then I've been looking at Warmogs too. I'm not sure. Obviously, it's a low sample size. It does have a really high win rate, but they did buff Warmogs by like 200 health or something here. So it's 100 health, movement speed, and it makes them just absurdly resistant to poke. I wish they lowered it from 6 seconds to like 3 seconds or something. But he's still pretty good. Hi, how are you? Now, I haven't tried Sunfire. That might be worth considering. That isn't... Actually, it's only 2,700. I thought that was a 3,200 gold item.
I have water.
Oh, you do, don't you?
I have water.
Yeah. That's cool. Martial water. So yeah, I was doing like Warmog second after I had Heartsteel, because this scales so well off of your item health, and he scales so well off of health. But maybe, I mean, if you're gonna be up against a bunch of melees, maybe. But I don't know. Try it out. See what you think. You can also just go for like a Knight's Vow if you want to do that. But if you just want the ton of damage, on your Kench, then Heartsteel plus Warmogs, you're gonna have like 4,500 HP, and you're gonna be clapping people. And then you can just like, if you get, take some damage, you can just kind of step out of the fight for a little bit. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, hang on. Okay, Rowan's getting in here freaking out. I just figured I would talk about Kench a little bit, just because he is someone I've been playing on stream, and I think he is kind of a counter pick, right? Like, he does have some bad matchups, but I think if you get, kind of practice on him and you're making the right decisions, it's kind of like Rakan. He's not quite as complex as Rakan, but trying to decide when you should go in, when you should stay back and peel. Usually you should peel, but just trying to do that, and timing that W does take a little bit of practice. It's got quite a big delay on it. But he's pretty good. Anyways, that's going to be it. So, you say hi? You say hi?
Hi.
Okay. But anyways, that's going to be it. So, thank y'all very much. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Consider becoming a member for less than $0.25 a day if you want to help support the channel as well. If you want to help buy Rowan some more toys and candy. You like toys and candy, don't you? Yeah. No. Throwing a little emotional manipulation there. Or at least turn off the ads. That gives me a couple of cents every time you watch a video, which does add up. It helps a little bit. Helps pay for the tax on a candy bar or something like that. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Be sure to come by, check out the stream, check out the rest of the content, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.